Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to the presentation of a new detailed lower extremity model. So first I want to show you the guys which are around me. First pick the time, I'm Sebastian Dingerfer. I will do the presentation. Arne Kies is the host and panelist, and also with me is Professor Koopman from the University of Twente, and he also is here to answer your questions if you have some. So first of all, this slide is for all the people who did not hear me now. I hope they will follow these instructions and also join us with the audio. So first, of course, this is a presentation where you cannot ask questions with an audio, but you can type in your questions. Therefore, you have this short panel on the right lower side, and you can type every question you have concerning the presentation or the model. And please just make sure that you will send the question to host, presenter, and panelists. You have to choose this in this form. And notice that this question will disappear next to its questions in the QA box, and you may have to scroll down or up to see it if there are different questions. And some of these questions will be answered on the fly from the team, which is around me, and all the questions concerning the presentation will be answered right after the presentation. So, first of all, a short outline of my talk today. First, I want to show you which data was used for this new leg model. And after this, I want to give you some model details. And of course, I want to show you some of the validation stuff for this new leg model. And I want to finish with an application of this new leg. And this was a very interesting project for the European Space Agency, which dealt with the evaluation of the tibia strains during walking in normal gravity on Earth and microgravity. So, the aim of this, at least the first part of my talk today, was to build up a new leg model, which increases the level of detail for our lower extremity. So, on the left-hand side, you can see a picture of our old leg model, which has already plenty of muscles in it, but on the right-hand side you can see a new model, which has a much higher level of detail, and of course, hopefully a much higher level of accuracy. And it's not only for the reason of having nicer graphics, it's also for having a much more detailed analysis of stresses and strains within the body, and of course it should also work as a template for more advanced joint kinematics, where you may need this much advanced or sophisticated muscles. So the starting point for this study was that there was a very good dataset released recently. This was done by Martijn Klein-Horsman of the University of Twente, and in his PhD thesis he collected a very comprehensive and consistent dataset from one donor. You can see the specifications here. It was 7 years old and 105 kilos weight. And on the right side, you can see a picture of this leg and of the measurement of this leg. And he measured in a very detailed way all the joint parameters, which means joint angles and joint axis and joint axis coordinates. And he also measured the muscle parameters in terms of optimal length and cross-sectional area. And of course also the geometrical parameters for these muscles and for the ligaments, which means the attachment size and the via points of the muscles. And of course the inertial properties of all the segments involved. So this is a very good starting point for a new detailed lower extremity model, and I used almost all of this data for our dataset. And this is also the reason why Koopman is now today with me, because he was one of the supervisors of this work. So if you have any questions concerning this Twente Lower Extremity Model, please feel free to ask them. They will be answered right on after the presentation from Bart. So, as I said, most of the muscle and joint data is taken from this Twente study. But there were some few modifications, and these were the joint axis and centers for the ankle and subtalar joint, which are put in a bit more general orientation. Also the wrapping surfaces for the iliacus muscles were adjusted to fit to the original pelvis of our body model, and the muscle insertion points were changed for the foot muscles, for the insertion on the foot, but also for the veer points of these muscles on the shank. Then there was some changes at the gluteus maximus superior muscles and on the psoas muscles. Basically all the muscles connecting the new extremity model with the spine were taken from the old leg in order to have a consistent model with the whole upper body of the trunk of our old model. So, using this data, we get this new extremity model, which has 7 degrees of freedom in total, which means 3 degrees of freedom in the hip, so a ball socket joint, and in the knee we have 2 degrees of freedom, basically one which is directly related to the knee joint. So the knee is the traditional hinge joint, and the patella is made in this way that it's connected with a rotational degree of freedom with respect to the thigh, the femur, and is rigid connected to the shank. So it will rotate around the femur and is stiffly connected to the shank. In the ankle region we have 2 degrees of freedom again. One is for eversion inversion in the ankle joint, and one is on the subtalar joint to carry the other degrees of freedom. And the rest of the foot is modeled as a stiff segment. So after degrees of freedom, of course, the muscles were inserted. We have now 55 muscles in each leg, which are divided in 159 branches. So, as you may see here in this detailed picture, for example, for the adductor muscles, you can see that these muscles which have a rather large attachment side are discretized in a way that we build up several branches to take care for the geometrics of the real muscle. So we end up in this large number of muscle branches per leg. We don't only have straight muscles in the leg model, we also have wrapping muscles, as you may see here with these iliopsoas muscles, which wrap around the pelvis. And there's also a wrapping surface on the knee, on the back side of the knee, for some wrapping of the muscles of the shank, for the gastrocnemius muscles. So when we look at these muscles in a little bit more detail, you can see it's a very detailed description of the adductor muscles. When you look at the front view of the model, and of course the wrapping again of the iliopsoas muscles, and on the left, there's a view from the back, you can see the gluteus muscles and the way they are discretized with the several branches of our muscles. When you look in the shank region, you also see how the tibialis anterior, for example, connects to the patella, to the foot. This picture is also to mention that we have new femur and tibia geometries in this model, which were kindly supplied by the University of Southampton by Peter Worsley. So, once again, a more detailed picture of the muscles at the knee and the ankle. And here you can see that the connection of the muscles on the patella and the rotation of this patella with respect to the femur. There are quite many muscles connected to the patella, as you can see here. For example, the vastus group, and of course also the rectus femoris. And all of them are carried via this rigid connection, which is connected to the shank. So after implementing, of course, all this musculoskeletal details, we want to do some validation to make sure that we not only draw nice pictures, but we also have some physical meaning behind this. So this validation was done in a three-step procedure. First of all, of course, the basic and most important one, I think, was to validate the muscle moment arms, so individual muscle moment arms. This is done with the tender and extrusive method. And basically it means that the derivative of the elongation of the muscle element was done with respect to the corresponding degree of freedom. So with this method, you can analyze each muscle and elongation with respect to the degree of freedom. The next level is to analyze the maximal isometric joint moments, and this was defined to be the ratio between the applied moment at a certain degree of freedom and the maximum muscle activity. And the most general validation, of course, is the gait analysis, where joint forces are analyzed and, for example, muscle activation patterns. And I will now go into detail with some of the results of this validation. So first of all, you can see here moment arms for different muscles for the subtalar joint. And you can see here data from a study of Klein. And you can see the red line here, which is in each of these muscles, which represents the computation in our new leg model. And as you see that for most muscles, it really fits very good to the average literature values. Some of them maybe not so good, but we have to have in mind that, of course, our model is also a little bit different representation of the reality, because all of our muscles are modeled in several branches, for example, and so you cannot measure just one very large muscle, so you measure an individual branch of a muscle, so it's a little bit different. But overall, we can say that we have a very good correlation for most of these muscles. And of course, we have a rather high scatter in the literature data for all of this. Basically, the same can be shown for the ankle joint, for the other joints. I will not go into detail for this other joints, because I think this is rather boring. But I have included all the slides, so if someone is really interested, he can have a look on the presentation after the real webcast. So this is for the ankle joint. We have also the same data for the knee joint, and of course for the hip joint, for the degrees of freedom in the hip joint. So if you're interested, please have a look afterwards. So the next more general validation was joint strength, and these diagrams are again taken from a study from Klein-Horsman's PhD thesis, and the red line is the data which was produced with our new model. And these graphs are rather nice because they incorporate many literature data, as you can see here, and you can also see that the new model really fits well to the average values of this joint strength. And here again, all degrees of freedom are plotted for which the data are available. So we have no data for the subtalar joint, for example. So to go one step up, we applied a gait application, which is mainly based on a gait application which is available in our public repository at the Gait Uni Miami model. And in this, using the same data as the Gait Uni Miami model, we just put in the new leg model into this body, use the Hill type 3-element muscular model, and as you may know, for this application, the motion and force plate data is given, and the loads are balanced by body force, of course, and by a support for residuals, which is located in the pelvis. So at this point, I'd like to show you a video, but unfortunately, this is not very practical via webcast, because there may be delays and stuff. So sorry for this. I will go directly to the result and to show you some hip reaction forces for this normal walking. Here you can see the normalized force, normalized with respect to the body weight of this model, and you can see the data for one step for the 3 degrees of freedom, or for the 3 force directions in the hip joint. And what you can see is this characteristic curve of the maximum forces in the inferior superior direction, and you can see all the other components which seem to fit rather good to evaluation of the leg model, I want to show you a real application of this. And this was a project which is funded by the European Space Agency, and as I said before, it dealt with analysis of tibia strains in normal walking and walking in microgravity. So, first of all, what's the reason for this project? Well, as some of you may know that there's tissue degeneration in space. So if you have people flying in space, you have pretty much the effect people have when they have long period bed rest. So bones lose density and also the muscles get degenerated. So in order to compensate this, several countermeasures are designed where astronauts should train, as you can see on this picture here, in order to avoid it. So in this particular example, we used a treadmill walking, pretty much as you can see in this picture, which means a person running on a treadmill, but it's reinforced by a harness and the gravity conditions, so you have to do simulations. And as I said, this harness will provide the gravity replacement load in our model. And the open questions for this countermeasures in general, I think, and also of course for the treadmill walking is, what's the proper design of this countermeasures? What is the level of the ground replacement load which has to be applied, which means the force in the springs, the pretension, and what kind of exercise is maybe the best, and of course what is the efficiency of this exercise. So in this case we wanted to analyze the walking with harness in microgravity, and you can see the actual model, which included a shoulder and a waist harness. So the body was reinforced by these springs. The motion data was again given. The same data was used as in the Miami data, and the ground reactions were now computed with a simple contact formulation. So the input to this model is just the weight of the model and the pretension in the springs. And this pretension is calibrated with respect to the body weight. So we have the model standing straight and build up a pretension in the springs, which is 80% body weight and 100% body weight. And these were the two cases we analyzed in this first preliminary study. And when we now apply this model, or when we now let this model walk, we can see how the hip reaction forces change. In this case, you can see the data for the gravity replacement load level of 80% body weight. And you can see that the joint reactions slowly change and show a much higher scatter, which of course at least partly is caused by this simple contact condition, but most effects of course are due to this altered mechanical boundary conditions. So this is rather interesting, and what is maybe even more interesting is that the ground reaction forces, lower ground reaction forces, do not change so much. So you can see here the green line, which is the normal walking ground reaction force, which of course is an input for the initial model. And the other two curves are computed data for this model with harness walking, and you can see that the shape looks pretty much the same. The level is a little bit lower for the 80% body weight model, and for the 100% body weight model, it's even a little bit more. The shape is still the same. So it's nice to know, but what would be even more nicer is to get the real stress state, for example, in the bones and for example in the tibia, to really evaluate the changes in the mechanics in the tissue. So for this case, we chose to evaluate one time step of this gait cycle, and the point of evaluation in this case was the pre-swing in the stand state, which was chosen due to the high knee reaction forces and the high muscle activity which is acting at a certain point. So for both models, for normal walking, as you can see here, and for the walking with harness, the same time step was taken, and all forces and moments which were acting on the tibia, which are over 180, because you have all via points also included, and you have any insertion points of the muscles. All these forces and moments were exported from anybody and forwarded to a finite element model. Here you can see the finite element model for this study. This is a preliminary study, so a rather basic description of the material was used. We used a linear isotropic material model for the whole bone, with an Young's modulus, which is average cortical bone, of course, and the medullary channel was modeled, but the epiphyses were filled with cortical bone. And there's one thing special about this model. You can see here all these connections between some points in space and the tibia, and these are rigid beams which connect muscle insertion points with the surface of the finite element model. This is necessary because you have also muscle insertion points which are not directly on the tibia surface. So, for example, you have these many points which are on the fibula, and they also have a mechanical effect, of course, on the tibia. So they were connected with rigid beams, and these rigid beams, in more detail, look pretty much like a spider's web. So I try to criticize a little bit this localization of the strains, stresses. So this was all done in ANSYS. And so we now look at some results of this finite element model. You can see the stresses, the strains, in this case, for normal walking in the tibia, and you can see the strains for extension of 80% body weight and pretension of 100% body weight. And what we can see is that the strains are lower for both cases of the harness walking. And that's interesting because it's lower even for the case of the 100% body weight model, where the ground reaction forces show a higher level than in the initial normal walking model. And the same, of course, can be seen when we just have a posterior view of the whole models. You can see also that the strains are, the shape of the strain panel looks pretty much the same for all models, but just the intensity level is increased in the normal walking, which of course gives some implications for the impact on the bone remodeling cycles. So, a short summary of this all. A very detailed leg model is proposed, which shows a very high level of detail in terms of muscle definition and both in geometrical and also, of course, in the physical parameters. And the validation results show a very reasonable performance of this leg, and also the gait patterns show a very reasonable performance. So what is missing now is, of course, a more detailed validation for various applications. And also, what would be nice to have a combined dataset of image and motion to analyze activation patterns. And of course, maybe the most important point for some of you at least is to include more advanced joint definitions in the knee, ankle, and foot. So right now the foot is specified as one rigid segment, and of course also knee kinematics are much more complex in reality. So there are some people we have to acknowledge for this study. First, of course, it's Martijn Klein-Horsman, who produced all this experimental data and, of course, helped with providing additional information. Then Karin Gorter of also the University of Twente, which started this work as an internship at Anybody Technology, or at Anybody Research Group, of course. And, of course, the University of Southampton for supplying the geometric data of the new bones. And, of course, finally, we have to thank the European Space Agency for financial support. Here you can find some references for both the model and for the validation of the model. And so, we hope that this model will be downloaded, improved, and validated for particular purposes. And, of course, we hope that you will use it to solve development research questions. This model will be, at least this preliminary model, you, and we will send you a link for this model. And for the model, of course, we will send you a copy of the presentation. So once again, I want to remind you that there's a QA panel